My name is Margaret Ellis. I turned 70 this year, and I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. I was wrong. On a bright Saturday morning in Santa Rosa, I drove out to my villa, the one I had built with my own hands and savings after my husband passed away. My heart was light because that day wasn't about me. It was about my granddaughter Lily's 10th birthday. I had promised her a cake with extra strawberries, the same kind I baked for her father when he was young. All week, I pictured her running into my arms, shouting, "Grandma, you made it." But when I pulled into the driveway, 3 unfamiliar SUVs were already parked there. Music thundered so loudly the glass panes trembled. My garden, where I had planted roses for every year of Lily's life, was trampled by children chasing each other with balloons. Empty soda cans rolled across the lawn like tumbleweeds. I tightened my grip on the keys and stepped inside. The scent of burnt food and perfume mixed together, choking the air. Strangers filled my living room, laughing too loudly, spilling drinks on the wicker chairs I had polished the night before. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Samantha, my daughter-in-law, wearing my embroidered apron, the one I stitched 20 years ago. She looked at me as if I were an intruder. Her eyes narrowed, her lips curled in disdain. "Why is she here?" she shouted over the music, voice sharp enough to silence half the room. "There's no room for you here. Margaret, go sit somewhere else." The words slammed against me harder than any door. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. It was supposed to be Lily's day, my granddaughter's birthday, and yet my presence, her grandmother, the woman who built this very house brick by brick, was treated as an inconvenience. Guests I didn't know stared at me with polite confusion, some with open annoyance. Samantha's sister smirked, holding a camera phone as if waiting for me to crumble. On the dining table, a cake glittered with candles. My heart clenched when I saw the inscription, "Happy Birthday, Lily and Family." My name, my role, my love erased. I forced a smile, though my hands trembled. "Where's Lily?" I asked softly. Samantha folded her arms. "She's with her friends. She doesn't need you hovering. Why don't you just leave before you embarrass her?" Embarrass her. At my granddaughter's 10th birthday. In my own house. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I swallowed it. Everyone was watching. I would not give them the show they expected. Still, a quiet storm was already forming inside me. That day was supposed to be about balloons, candles, and laughter. Instead, it became the day my family declared war on me. As I stood there in the corner of my own living room, watching Samantha parade around like the lady of the house, memories pulled me back decades. I was 49 when my husband passed away suddenly from a heart attack. The world turned gray overnight. My son, Daniel, was only 25, still stumbling his way through adulthood. The bills piled high. The nights grew long. And every morning, I woke to silence that seemed endless. Yet even in the midst of grief, a stubborn flame inside me refused to be extinguished. That flame became a dream, to build a place by the countryside, a refuge where memories of my husband could live alongside hopes for the future. I was just a librarian with modest wages, but I took every extra shift the library offered. I restored rare books late at night for collectors. I tutored neighborhood children in reading comprehension until my eyes blurred. Dollar by dollar, the savings grew. When the lot became available, a stretch of land with oaks bending toward the California sun, I signed my name with hands still shaking from fatigue. "Are you sure you can handle this project alone?" the broker asked me, pity dripping from his voice. I smiled, though my lips were cracked. "I am not alone. I have my son." And in those early days, Daniel was there. On weekends. He carried bricks with me. He planted the first sapling in what would become my rose garden. I can still see him crouched with dirt under his nails, looking up at me with the innocence of a boy, not yet hardened by pride. Mom, one day I'll tell my kids how my mother built this house from nothing. I'll tell them you're the strongest woman I know. That promise kept me going through 2 years of construction. I laid tiles with my own hands. I painted walls until my arms ached. Every corner of that house bore my fingerprints. Every room carried the weight of sacrifice. When we finally stepped into the finished villa, Daniel hugged me tight. We did it. Mom, he whispered. We made a home. I built it for family dinners, for laughter echoing through the halls, for birthdays where my granddaughter would one day blow out candles surrounded by love. And now on her 10th birthday, I was being told there was no room for me. My name had vanished from the cake, just as my presence was erased from their hearts. Samantha's cruel words that morning weren't just insults. They were a knife twisting into decades of sacrifice. And Daniel, my once devoted son, was nowhere to be found, leaving me alone in the shadows of the very house we had built together. As laughter rang from the backyard, I closed my eyes and clung to those memories of building, of love, of promises once made. They reminded me who I was. They reminded me why I could not and would not surrender. The music throbbed from the backyard, a heavy rhythm that shook the floorboards. I slipped away from the crowd, past the kitchen where Samantha's friends were piling food onto paper plates as if they owned the place. My feet carried me up the stairs, away from the noise, into the one place I thought might still be mine, my study. The door creaked as I opened it. For a moment, I expected to breathe in the familiar scent of books and cedar polish. Instead, the air smelled of cheap perfume and crumpled wrapping paper. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling fan, ribbons trailing over the desk where I once balanced checkbooks and graded essays for extra cash. On top of the desk lay a stack of documents, not birthday cards or gifts, but official-looking papers spread carelessly among discarded plates of half-eaten cake. My heart thudded as I picked them up. The first page froze the air in my lungs, a medical assessment declaring me mentally unfit to manage property. My name was written in bold letters, alongside words that cut like knives: dementia, advanced age, declining judgment. I had never seen the so-called doctor listed at the bottom. Yet there was his signature, neat and final, stamped with a clinic I had never set foot in. I turned to the next paper. It was worse. A petition to transfer ownership of my villa to Daniel Ellis. My son, my only child. The room spun as I read line after line, each more cruel than the last. The request argued that, as my sole heir, Daniel should assume responsibility of the estate for the welfare of his wife and child. At the bottom, written in hurried cursive, was a note that wasn't official but might as well have been a confession. Once this is through, we can sell for $400 K, enough to pay debts and Lily's school tuition. I knew the handwriting, Samantha's. My knees trembled, but I steadied myself against the desk. The betrayal was no longer whispers and cruel laughs. It was documented, notarized, stamped into existence. They weren't just humiliating me on Lily's birthday. They were plotting to erase me completely. I looked around the study. My books had been shoved into boxes. The family photos that once lined the shelves were gone. In their place, Samantha's sister had set down her handbag and a pair of sunglasses, as if marking territory. Even my desk drawers had been rifled through, left half open. I clutched the papers to my chest and felt the storm rising in me. This wasn't just disrespect. It was premeditated theft, hidden behind balloons and candles. Downstairs, The crowd cheered as Lily blew out her candles. I closed my eyes and listened. That sound so sweet, so innocent, would have warmed my heart once. Now it rang in my ears as a cruel reminder. They had turned my granddaughter's birthday into the stage for my destruction. But they had underestimated me. I would not go quietly. I slipped the forged documents into my handbag and walked back downstairs, forcing a neutral expression. No one noticed me leave. Samantha was too busy cutting cake and basking in compliments from her guests. They laughed and sang while the grandmother whose love and labor had built this villa, walked out unseen like a shadow erased from her own family's story. The evening air was cool against my skin as I stepped into the driveway. My car sat between those unfamiliar SUVs, as out of place as I felt. I slid behind the wheel and drove away, each mile stretching the ache in my chest until it felt unbearable. At a roadside inn, I checked into a room that smelled faintly of mildew and stale coffee. The clerk gave me a curious glance when I paid in cash, but I had no strength to explain. It was my granddaughter's 10th birthday, and instead of celebrating with her, I was alone in a cheap motel, holding evidence that my son and his wife were preparing to erase me. Sleep would not come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Samantha in my apron, smirking as if the house and my family were hers. I heard again the sneer in her voice. "There's no room for you here." The humiliation burned, but beneath it, something colder began to form. A rage not loud or reckless, but sharp, calculated. I thought of Daniel, the boy who once planted roses with me in the yard, who swore he'd always protect me. Where was that boy now? Buried beneath debt, pride, and the poisonous influence of his wife. My tears stained the pillow, but they dried quickly. Grief had its place, but survival demanded clarity. By dawn, I had a plan. I drove to the local bank, the same branch where I had deposited every hard-earned dollar from years of tutoring and repairing books. The manager, Mr. Ramirez, had known me for 20 years. His face softened with recognition when I asked to see my balances. He led me to his office, and when he turned the monitor toward me, my heart steadied. $135. 0 inches savings, another $20. 0 inches certificates, and nearly $10. 0 inches checking, over $165. 000. Enough to fight. Mrs. Every. "Ellis," he said carefully, "you're still as sharp as ever. If anyone questions that, I'll vouch for you." He handed me a letter certifying my financial competence. Then he leaned closer. "If this is about property or family, I can recommend someone, a lawyer who deals with cases exactly like this. His name is Michael Turner." I left the bank with a letter in my bag and fire in my veins. They thought they could use forged papers to steal my home. They thought age made me weak. They had no idea I had just declared war. Michael Turner's office overlooked the courthouse square in Santa Rosa. It was lined with shelves of leather-bound volumes and smelled faintly of cedar, like a place where truth lived. He was in his mid-60s, gray hair cut neat, eyes sharp behind thin glasses. When he shook my hand, he didn't treat me like a fragile old woman. He looked at me like a fighter. "Mrs. Zitifand." "Ellis," he said, motioning for me to sit. "Tell me everything. Leave nothing out." So I did. I told him about the birthday party, Samantha's cruel dismissal, the documents in my study, the forged medical report, and the note promising to sell my villa for cash. As I spoke, Michael scribbled in a thick notebook, his jaw tightening with each detail. When I finished, silence hung heavy between us. He leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "This is worse than a family dispute. What you've described is attempted property fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and theft. I placed the stack of papers on his desk. Here. Proof. He scanned the pages, then looked up. Mrs. Ellis, your case is strong. Very strong. Do you want to fight this? I met his gaze. I don't want to fight my family, but I refuse to let them destroy me. Yes, I'll fight. Michael nodded. Then here's the plan. Tomorrow, I'll file for an emergency eviction order. Well, serve it with the sheriff's office present, so there's no room for argument. Well, also report the stolen jewelry and falsified medical documents. Once the DA sees this, they'll have no choice but to investigate. And if it goes criminal, your son and his wife could face charges. The words should have broken me criminal charges against my only son, but instead, I felt a strange calm. They had chosen this path, not me. Michael continued. Well, need evidence beyond the papers. Do you have photos of the damage? I pulled out my phone. There they were, Samantha's relatives drinking on my terrace. Children wrecking the garden. Veronica posing in selfies captioned our new villa. Michael scrolled, then smiled grimly. Perfect. Social media is often a thief's undoing. I exhaled, my hands steady for the first time in days. How much will this cost? My retainer is $5,000. After that, well, settle fees once the case is resolved. Can you manage it? I thought of the bank letter in my purse. Yes, today. He leaned forward. Then understand this. Once we act, there's no going back. Your relationship with Daniel may never recover. A lump rose in my throat, but I swallowed it down. If the price of keeping my dignity is losing a son who betrayed me, then so be it. Michael reached for his pen. Good. Let's begin. Sunday morning dawned with a quiet sky, but my heart pounded like a drum. I dressed in my best gray suit, the one I used to wear for library board meetings, and pinned my hair neatly back. This was no ordinary day. Today I would reclaim what was mine. Michael Turner arrived promptly, carrying a leather briefcase filled with documents. With him came a police officer in uniform and a public notary. We drove together to my villa. The closer we got, the tighter my chest felt, but I refused to let fear win. From down the road, I could already hear music. Balloons still clung to the railing. Samantha's voice carried through the morning air, loud and commanding. She was laughing with her guests, boasting about the best birthday party ever. When our car pulled into the driveway, conversations froze. Samantha's eyes widened as she spotted the officer's badge and the stack of legal folders. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the terrace. Good morning, Michael announced firmly, stepping forward. I am attorney Michael Turner, legal representative for Mrs. Blah. Margaret Ellis, the sole and rightful owner of this property. We are here to deliver a court-ordered eviction for illegal trespassing. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some of the guests stood up in alarm. Others pulled out their phones. Samantha's mother rushed over, her face pale. There must be some mistake. This is Daniel's house, he said so. No, ma'am, the officer replied coldly. The deed is here, in Mrs. Ellis' name. Taxes, utilities, and mortgage history all confirm her ownership. You have 2 hours to vacate. Samantha's composure cracked. She turned on me, fury in her eyes. You called the police? At your own granddaughter's party? How could you humiliate us like this? I stood tall, my voice steady. The humiliation started when you told me there was no room for me in my own home. Just then, a car screeched into the driveway. Daniel jumped out, his tie askew, his face tight with worry. He looked from me to Samantha, to the officer with his clipboard. "What's going on?" Michael handed him the forged documents. "You should know." "Mr. Steadit." "Ellis, these papers were found in your home. They attempt to transfer ownership from your mother to you, citing false medical claims of dementia." Daniel's face drained of color. He stammered, "Mom, it can explain." I locked eyes with him. Is this my birthday gift? Daniel? Forged papers and betrayal? The silence that followed cut deeper than any scream. Samantha reached for his arm, urging him to speak, but he pulled away. His shame was visible, raw. The officer cleared his throat. "You have exactly 120 minutes. Begin packing." And just like that, the war that started with balloons and cake turned into a courtroom drama unfolding in my garden. The villa that had once been my sanctuary became a stage of chaos. Samantha's guests scattered, some whispering in shock, others hurrying to their cars, not wanting to be part of the scandal. The children cried, confused about why the balloons and games had turned into shouting and police orders. Samantha stormed back and forth, her heels clattering against the deck. "This is outrageous!" she screamed. "You can't just throw us out like criminals." "Daniel, say something!" Daniel stood frozen near the steps, his shoulders hunched, eyes on the ground. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, a man crumbling under the weight of his own choices. The officer handed Samantha a form. "You have 1 hour and 50 minutes remaining. Anything belonging to Mrs. Process. Ellis stays here. If you try to remove her property, you will be arrested." Her mother collapsed into a chair, muttering through tears, "You told us everything was settled. Samantha, you promised your husband had full rights. Now look at us humiliated in front of everyone." "Shut up." "Mom!" Samantha snapped, shoving clothes into trash bags. None of this would have happened if that old woman had just cooperated. I stood in the garden, roses crushed beneath half-packed suitcases, and felt the strangest calm. For years, I had been the quiet one, the one who bent over backward to keep peace. But now I saw their desperation. Clearly it was ugly, frantic, and powerless. Veronica, Samantha's sister, pulled out her phone and began recording. "Everyone will see how this woman treats her family," she hissed, zooming in on my face. The notary stepped forward and shook his head. "Miss, you are not authorized to film legal proceedings. Put it away now." When she refused, the officer confiscated the phone. "One more stunt like that, and you'll be charged with obstruction." The tension cracked further when Daniel finally approached me. His voice was low, trembling. "Mom, can't we fix this? You've made your point. Let us stay, and give back whatever was taken. Make it right." I looked at him, my son, my only child, and felt my heart fracture all over again. "You betrayed me on Lily's birthday. You stood silent while your wife threw me out of my own home. Tell me, Daniel, how do you fix that?" His lips parted, but no words came. Michael Turner placed a hand on my arm. "Mrs. Ellis, don't negotiate. They've shown their intentions already. The law is on your side." Behind us, Samantha's voice rose again, shrill with fury. "You'll regret this. Margaret, appeal. Prove you're unfit." I turned, meeting her venom with quiet strength. "You already made your biggest mistake. You underestimated me." By the time the police car pulled away, Silence wrapped around the villa. The balloons sagged. The cake was half melted in the sun, and Samantha's family had driven off in a caravan of shame. For the first time in days, I stood on my terrace alone, breathing in the salty breeze. My home, my refuge, was mine again. The next morning, a professional cleaning crew arrived. I paid them without hesitation. They scrubbed away the grease on my stove, replaced broken china, and aired out the rooms heavy with smoke and perfume. By evening, the villa felt whole again, though the scars of betrayal lingered like shadows. Michael Turner kept his word. Within a week, the district attorney had opened a fraud case. The corrupt doctor who signed my dementia report was suspended. Daniel and Samantha faced heavy fines, probation, and a permanent mark on their record. No prison time, but enough to strip them of their smug superiority. They had gambled with lies and lost more than money. They lost their dignity. I updated my will. The villa would no longer pass to Daniel. Instead, I arranged for it to become a learning retreat for children who had no safe place to read, study, and dream. The same dream that once kept me alive would now be their gift. 6 months later, I baked a cake not in bitterness, but in quiet triumph. This time, the guest list was short. A few close friends from the library, my sister Laura, and most importantly, my granddaughter Lily. She ran through the door, her hair flying, and hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs might crack. "Grandma," she whispered, "I am glad you're here this time." Her words melted every scar left by her parents' betrayal. I led her to the terrace where a simple cake waited, pink frosting, and 10 candles standing proud. When she blew them out, I felt something break free inside me. Not anger, not grief, but renewal. This was the birthday celebration that mattered. Not the loud party Samantha threw for herself, but a gathering rooted in love and truth. My granddaughter's laughter rang through the villa, filling the walls I had once built with my bare hands. As the sun dipped into the horizon, painting the California sky with streaks of gold and rose, I raised a glass of sparkling cider. "To family," I said softly, "the kind that chooses love over greed." And for the first time in months, peace settled in my bones. When I look back on everything that happened, I realize that the deepest wound was not losing objects or even money. It was facing betrayal from the people I loved most. But I also learned that dignity and truth are worth protecting, even when it means standing against your own blood. Age does not make us weak. It gives us clarity, resilience, and the courage to fight for what is right. My granddaughter's smile reminded me that legacy is not about houses or bank accounts. It is about the values we leave behind. I chose to leave her a lesson that love is stronger than greed, and respect is stronger than pride. Now, I want to ask you, what lesson do you take from my story? And from which city are you watching today? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments.